Hi guys, welcome to Tapping In Part 1. I'm Lisa and I will be going through part of the webinar with you today. So first of all, we want to make an acknowledgement of country. 30 Foot Drop acknowledges the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and to their cultures and to elders both past and present. Funding. 30 Foot Drop would like to acknowledge the Department of Communities, Disabled Services for funding this and many other initiatives. Without their support, many projects such as Two Wise Monkeys would not see the light of day. And we would be much more poorer for it. This workshop is part of the Realities and Advantages of Access and Inclusion grant awarded to 30 Foot Drop as part of the Information, Linkages and Capacity Building grants for 2018 and 2019. Okay, housekeeping. Unfortunately, we do not have the resources to monitor all of the live streams during the live sessions. So if you want to ask any questions or interact with us, please head over to our website, which is www.30footdrop.com.au/live, and in there you can ask any questions that you may have for us. So send away.
Now, one moment, please, everybody. We're having a little bit of a sound issue, so can you please pass me the headphones, and I will.
Sorry, we're just having a sound issue. We'll just sort that out.
There we go. We're all sorted now.
Cool.
Apologies, everybody.
Sorry about that. So yeah, if you've got any questions, just head over to our website and pop in the chat part, and we can talk to you. So we'll be covering a lot of information in a short period of time. So we recommend that attendees take actions to minimise any distractions that you may have. And also please make sure that 30 Foot Drop is tagged in anything that you share about what we do tonight. That would be greatly appreciated. We'll also be recording this session, so if you've missed out or didn't quite hear what I said, you can go back and look at it again. And this will be posted to the 30 Foot Drop Vimeo library, so you can find it there. We will be referencing research during today's session will also be available at the 30 Foot Drop library. At the end of the webinar, if you could all just take some time out to do the survey for us, that would be awesome. Right, so presenters. Oh God. We've done the housekeeping.
It's alright, sound issue through yet?
Right, okay, so I'm Lisa, as I said before, and I will read you a little bit about myself. I'm Hear No Evil, so just by looking at me, you probably can't tell what I may suffer from. Through me, you'll realise that you hear no evil about impairment. My story is definitely a more hidden one. At age 8, I was diagnosed with mild dyslexia. Teachers used to hit me on the head, read out my low marks, and yell at me in front of all my classmates, making me completely embarrassed. They used to say, "Why don't you understand? What's wrong with you?" making me feel completely dumb and unworthy. Despite these challenges though, growing up, the dyslexia only made me more determined to succeed, and I achieved much more than most of those people probably thought I could have. So at the moment, I've got a photography business which I run from home and sell prints and artwork and stuff. And I also have diplomas in the arts field and one in counselling. And now I will hand you over to Ben, the other presenter, to introduce himself.
Thank you, Lisa. We're doing it a little bit differently tonight. So yeah, I am Ben. I'm the Managing Director of 30 Foot Drop. I am a C5 quadriplegic, and yeah, I started 30-foot drop because after I had my injury at the age of 22, I started to get very angry and frustrated with the ignorance of society when it came to disabilities. What I soon came to realise, as a bit of a light bulb moment, is that at the age of 22, when I broke my neck, I knew nothing about this part of our society, this amazingly diverse part of society. So I tried to figure out why that was, and I realised that it's because nobody's actually out there teaching it. So that's why 30-foot drop came in. So I am see no evil. I obviously have a disability or impairment. Being a quadriplegic, my hands don't work quite properly, and you'll see that I float along very well on camera, but that's because I'm on wheels. And through me, you will see that there is no evil about disability or impairment. Lisa, back to you.
Excuse me. Felt a bit strange sliding around. Ben, I'll just let me know if I'm in the right position. Right, okay. So, but wait, you say, isn't there supposed to be 3 wise monkeys? Well, where is speak no evil? Who is speak no evil? And the answer is you. The aim of today's webinar is to turn you into that wise monkey. You'll begin on a journey and realise that impairment or not, we are all human and deserve to be acknowledged and treated with the same respect as everyone else. Outline a method. So how are we going to get you started on the path of the wise monkey? Well, there's a lot to learn about people with impairment and the opportunities they represent as employees. First up, we'll examine and bust some of the common myths around employing someone with an impairment. After our little myth-buster session, we will then get down to the brass tacks and look at some subsidies that are available when employing someone with an impairment and how to access them. Okay, sorry about that. The final subject is workplace modifications and how to access the funding for these. To finish off, we'll do an open forum session. So how are we going to cover this? What will our teaching method be? The answer is fun, open, honest discussion. And once again, feel free to ask any questions, please. None are off limits. You will notice that there is very little written content in the slides, and that's because we are all here to interact with each other. So once again, we encourage you to head on over to the chat window on our website and ask any questions that you might have. Okay, terminology and review. To reduce confusion and ensure understanding, we want to review some of the terminology that we will be using in this session. First is the difference between disability and impairment. An impairment is an injury, illness, or congenital condition that causes or is likely to cause a loss or difference of physiological and psychological function. In short, an impairment is your medical diagnosis. So my medical diagnosis is that I have mild dyslexia, and that impairment stops me from doing certain things that other people probably find easy. A disability, on the other hand, is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in society on an equal level due to social and environmental barriers. It is, as the word implies, something that makes you unable to access something in particular. So certain fonts may disable me if someone gives me too much information and I know not much about it, then I can get confused and a bit lost. Okay, so the next thing we're going to discuss is access and inclusion. And Access refers to the removal or reduction of barriers, physical barriers to participation in activities and functions in the community. At its core, access focuses a lot on the physical world around us and is easily assessed with a checklist. Inclusion is definitely more undermined. Inclusion is more a physiological state of being and is a process whereby every person, irrespective of their age, disability, gender, religion, sexual preference or nationality, who wishes to and can participate fully in all aspects of the activity or service, just the same as anyone else in the community. Now, hopefully this all makes sense to you, and let's begin. Right, okay. Myth versus reality. Let us have a look at the myths and realities that exist when employing people with an impairment. These myths aren't just random statements that have been plucked out of the air. They are 7 recurring reasons for not employing someone with an impairment from studies all over the world. So myth 1. People with impairment need expensive modifications in order to be productive as an employee. Impairments are like people. Every single one is unique and not everyone with an impairment needs modifications. My advice is to ask any potential employee and find out what that is. Ben readily admits that getting adaptations for his impairments are expensive. Wheelchairs can cost $20,000 plus, and having a car modified is $50,000 plus. The thing is, most of the time, someone with this impairment already has these things and don't need more. So because of this, it makes it easier for the employer to take on this person, because this person doesn't necessarily need the car or the wheelchair. If an employee with an impairment does need a modification, they are often easy and inexpensive. There is a good chance that it isn't the first time this person has come across this barrier, and they'll just know a way to work around it. Finally, if a modification is required and it's expensive, there's funding available, which we will cover later on in this session. Okay. Myth 2. People with impairment are frequently absent from work. This couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the reality is opposite. According to the Disability Investment Group, The Way Forward, a disability policy framework for Australia 2009, 86% of employees with an impairment have the same or superior attendance rate than other workers. Studies show that they also have a reduced turnover rate, less turnover means less onboarding, which leads to reduced costs. Why is this the case? The unemployment rate for people with an impairment is double that of the rest of society. A lot. It will also take on average a person twice as many job applications before landing a job, with one friend of Ben's applying for 183 jobs before landing the actual job. So when this happens to people, I guess they are just so happy and grateful they've got the job. They'll do anything to keep it and do well at it. So myth 3. People with impairment are only suited to unskilled work. People with impairment, so this is massively untrue. People with an impairment have such a range of skills, talents and abilities. And we're all good at all sorts of different things. It's just a matter of finding out what that is and finding the right job that suits them. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics reported that in 2012, 19.9% of working age people with an impairment were employed as professionals. 14.1% were working as clerical or administrative workers. 15% were working as technicians or trades. 11.6 run their own business, and 33.7 work from home. Myth 4. My workers' compensation premiums and WHS incidents will go up. Once again, not true. Employing someone with an impairment does not affect your premiums or insurance. Insurance underwriters look at the incident's history and workers' compensation, not the number of people with an impairment employed in your business. Further to that, studies have shown that that employees with an impairment are up to 6 times less likely to have a WHS incident and are less likely to lodge a workers' compensation plan. These reduced rates will lower with businesses' insurance. I'm a bit stuck here. The reason that this can be attributed is to the difficulty many people have with impairment in finding employment. When it is hard to find employment, you are not going to risk your job and by not going with the rules and cutting corners. You go the extra mile to keep the job. Right. Okay. I'm going to hand the next myth over to Ben. Thank you.
No problem. So, myth 5. People with impairment are less productive employees. Look, you might be starting to pick up a bit of a trend by now. Not true. Look, at the end of the day, studies have shown that when matched with a position that suits their ability, employees with an impairment are as productive as their counterparts. Okay? And for those that actually cannot be as productive as their counterparts due to health condition or impairment, there is actually a system called the supported wage subsidy that is available to help do that. And we'll be covering that a little bit later under subsidies. Myth 6. Workers with impairment will not fit into my workplace. No, not true. Really not true. Look, at the end of the day, competence and efficiency leads to co-worker acceptance. Okay? When somebody new joins your workplace, your first thought is about yourself. Will this new employee be able to work to a level that will make sure that you're not going to end up having to do more than you already were? Okay? When employees show their competence and the ability to be able to do the job, acceptance comes from that. Yeah? So that means that regardless of impairment, as long as you're picking the right person for the right job, they're going to get accepted. On top of that, with people with impairment making up approximately 20% of the population, there is a very, very good chance that friends and relatives of your employees will also have an impairment of some sort. And this often gives a common ground to actually start conversation and to allow people to try and fit in. And the last thing is the studies. Studies show that employer initiatives in hiring people with impairment can have positive bottom line results, increase staff morale, and community recognition as good corporate citizens. So not only are you getting a great employee, but you're also doing your bottom line and your staff morale a favour. And final myth. If they don't work out, I cannot discipline them or fire them. Not true. Look, employing a person with impairment is the same as any other worker. You must establish clear performance expectations from the start. If they are unable or unwilling to do the job, you can take further action as normal. There are no special laws that prevent you from disciplining or terminating an employee who is unable or unwilling to do their job. So hopefully this has actually busted a few myths that may have existed for you. If there are any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat box. And if you aren't there already, please head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay? That is the one place that we will be monitoring the chat. But now, from myths, now that you can understand why some of the preconceptions around employing people with impairment just aren't true, let's have a look at some of the subsidies that are actually available to help employers and encourage employers to employ more people with the impairment. So, what subsidies are available? Now, if you'll excuse me, I just need to move my notes for one moment. There we go. Much better. When employing a person with impairment, okay, there are various opportunities depending on the job seeker profile and role hours available. Okay, these subsidies are designed to offset training and other costs that actually come from onboarding this person. These can be released in a lump sum or in a flexible payment, and they are all contingent upon the following things. First up, the award rate must be paid. Okay, that is the number one clearest thing, is that the award rate for the role must be paid. The minimum hours need to be worked as agreed. Okay, although there is a little bit of a caveat to that. When I talk about minimum hours in the subsidies coming up, it's actually an average. So if you work in an industry where it is a lot of feast or famine, where one week somebody may be doing 30 hours, another week they'll do none, and the next week they might do 10. Okay, you then average it out. You average that 40 hours out over the 3 weeks. Okay, so minimum hours is actually an average. I'll provide more examples of that as we go. And lastly, the employee must be registered with a disability employment service. Okay, disability employment services, or DES providers, are free resources available, and we'll actually explain more about them in part 2 of our webinars, which actually premieres tomorrow morning. Join in. So there are 4 options available, and what I'm about to cover, these are the basic outlines, and some further criteria may apply. So I really encourage you to get a hold of the DES providers in your area. But let's go on into the wage subsidies. The wage subsidies. And funnily enough, the first one is actually called the wage subsidy. Really creative name. But look, the amount of the wage subsidy is $1,500. Okay, and the requirements for it is that the employee must work a minimum of 8 hours a week for a minimum of a 13-week duration, with the expectation of the employment lasting for at least 13 weeks more. Now, if unforeseen circumstances lead to the employment ending at 13 weeks because there is a drop in the market or something similar, then you will still get paid the full amount. Okay? But when you originally set up the employment, there must be the expectation that this job is going to last for a minimum of 26 weeks. Okay, which is 6 months, pretty much. Okay, so $1,500, it's not really anything to sneeze at. Onboarding costs can get quite ridiculous, and there is also the cost of training in that. So, when you combine this with a lot of the myths that we just covered, okay, you're getting a great employee who's going to add much to your business. And then on top of that, their onboarding costs get reduced. It's a win-win. The second subsidy is called Wage Start. Okay, now this one's a bit more. It's $6,000. Okay, so we're starting to go up in price a little bit. And the requirements for this are slightly different from before. So this one has a few more requirements attached to it. So the first one is that the employee must be under the age of 50 at the time of employment. Okay? And they need to be a longer-term unemployed job seeker. Okay? To be a longer-term unemployed job seeker, you must have been actively searching for a job for at least 52 weeks, which is pretty much a year, or longer. Okay? The employment itself must provide at least 15 hours per week over a 26-week duration. Now, like I said, when we talk about hours, it is an average. Okay? So as long as over the 26-week duration, the employee works on average 15 hours per week, it doesn't matter what way it is all structured, as long as, of course, you're sticking within state legislation that may apply to you. The final of the simple subsidies, okay? This is the restart subsidy. Going up again, so this is $10,000. Okay, now once again, there are a few more requirements that apply. So where before it was for people under the age of 50, this subsidy is for people over the age of 50. Okay, and once again, they need to be longer term unemployed job seekers. Okay, so being in active job search mode for a minimum of a year in order to access this. Okay? The employee must average at least 20 hours per week over the 26-week duration. Okay? $10,000, that's a fair whack of money for bringing on an amazing employee. And you can see there's so many different available subsidies and different ways of actually putting this together. Now, the final subsidy out of the four is called the supported wage system. Now, this one's a little bit different. It's not a flat amount or a flat hours. Okay, it is slightly differently set up, but it is set up in a way that I think makes use of a niche. Okay, so in short, the wage subsidy revolves around the concept of fair pay for fair work. Okay, so it allows candidates who cannot perform all job requirements to receive a productivity-based wage, and therefore not actually disadvantage the employer financially. An assessment done by an independent assessor determines the gap between the actual and required or standard performance due to the worker's health condition or impairment, and the percentage of hourly rate payable. For example, if it's determined that someone is producing work to 70% of the required standard, then the relevant award rate is applicable, but only at 70% of the hour. Okay? This allows people with very severe impairments to work without disadvantaging the employer. Okay? It allows these people to still be able to be employed, and the employer still gaining a great employee with no real downsides. So how can employers access these subsidies? Okay, simple. You've got to contact your local disability employment service to get started. Okay, easiest way to find disability employment services in your area is good old Google or something similar. Okay, jump on there and search for disability employment services followed by your town or region. Okay, it will come up with a list of options. Now, we'll be covering disability employment service providers and their roles in the next webinar. Okay, I really encourage you guys to tune in for that one, because it is an amazing resource that you can actually tap into and manage to make the most of as an employer. Because let's face it, business margins are getting tight. Yeah, we need every advantage we can get. Make the most of it. Now that we've gone over subsidies, let's move on into the final subject for tonight, okay, of information. And that is workplace modifications. Now, in Australia, you can't really talk about workplace modifications as far as impairment goes without involving job access. So, what is job access? Job access, it's the national hub for workplace employment information for people with a disability, employers and service providers. Now, notice they do say people with a disability there. I've taken that directly off their website. A bit more of a fan of people with impairment, but you know, it's a personal thing. Now, Job Access is fully funded by the Employment Assistance Fund, which is actually a government initiative. Okay, so all of the funds come from that. They don't actually charge for what they do, which is amazing. Well, they don't charge the workplace. And they offer financial assistance for workplace modifications that assist people with a disability or impairment to gain meaningful, lasting employment. Okay, really, really great resource once again. Really encourage people to make the most of it. So, workplace modifications, what are they? As far as Job Access goes, they fund a lot of different workplace mods. Okay, and I'm going to go through some of the examples now. Okay, so workplace modifications through Job Access can be used for making adjustments to the physical workplace. Okay, so if there are physical barriers to people being able to actually gain employment, they are a great resource for this. They can actually help you with the physical adjustments. Making modifications to work vehicles, if somebody has acquired an impairment that is actually making it hard for them to drive, this is the place to go. If any specialised equipment is required for the person to actually do the job, a great example would be me. Okay, I have very limited dexterity in my hands, which means that using a normal mouse is very hard. So I can actually access specialised mice that make the job a lot easier for me. It can also be used to obtain information and communication devices required in the course of the employment. And Auslan interpretive services are available through this service. There are also specialist services for employees with specific learning disorders and mental health conditions. You can actually access disability awareness training for your workplace, including deafness awareness. Now, that is an amazing value add to your business that we'll be covering in a sec. Oh, and the last thing that they offer as well, which there isn't a point for some reason on the slide, is mental health awareness and first aid training. Okay, these are all things that really add a lot of value to your workplace. So, how can you apply for these things? Okay, they're amazing. How do you get hold of them? So, as a note, most disability employment service providers will actually assist you with making the applications. Okay, they will actually give you a lot of help to get the evidence together. But if you wish to go it alone, that's fine. If you want to access this particular fund, the employee doesn't need to be registered with the Disability Employment Service. It just makes it easier because they know the system. So the first thing you've got to do is actually submit the application to the Employment Assistance Fund. Okay, you'll find that in the Job Access website, and they have an application form there. Now, it is really well laid out and it's very, very easy to follow. It will take you through what evidence is required and the number of quotes that they require depending on the different amounts that you're actually applying for. Very, very easy to do, and if you are having trouble, they do also have a telephone service that you can ring up to get help with your application. And they are amazing. They make things really, really easy. Once it's actually submitted, Job Access will then assess the application. And from there, one of two things will happen. Okay? Well, one of three things will happen. Okay? The first one is that your application is either rejected or requires extra work. And that's, that can happen if you filled out things wrong. The second thing that can happen is that it gets approved. Okay? And when it gets approved, they will tell you whether a workplace assessment is required. So for some of the bigger ticket items, especially when you're looking at physical adjustments to the workplace, there is often a workplace assessment that is done to make sure that what you're proposing is actually really needed to be done. Okay, it is a way of making sure that people don't take the piss, pretty much. So if an assessment is not required, okay, then they'll tell the workplace to purchase the goods and services, and then they will get reimbursed by Job Access. Simple. If an assessment is required, okay, Job Access will actually arrange a specialist to confirm the workplace changes free of charge. Okay, they will organise a specialist to come out and have a look at your workplace and go through it and make sure that you're choosing the most reasonable option out of them. Now, if you're really sensible and you're wanting to get the most out of this service, have a look around the rest of your workplace. Often there'll be an occupational therapist, and if you have any other questions that may not quite fall underneath your claim, a lot of the time if you ask them to have a look at it whilst they're there anyway, they often will. You might be able to save yourself a little bit of dinero. And once the workplace changes have been confirmed, then once again the workplace then goes ahead and purchases the goods or services and gets reimbursed by Job Access. So the application process is quite easy, and there is room in there to be able to value add to your business. But like all things, when it comes to funding and grants, there are actually funding caps that apply. And so we'll actually go through those now. So the first funding cap relates to physical workplace adjustments. Okay, physical workplace adjustments are capped at $30,000, which is better than a kick in the butt. Let's face it. Now, if you're really sensible, okay, if you're doing the physical workplace adjustments, you're going to have a builder coming out or something similar to actually make these changes. If you have anything else that needs to be done around your business at the same time, work with the builder to get them done as well. Okay, although you will not be able to charge it in the cap, it will save you the call out fee. It will save you another quoting fee. It will save you money, and that's what you're trying to do here. And that's what I'm trying to advise you is to value add. Okay, so physical workplace adjustments capped at $30,000. Auslan, okay, has got 3 levels under this system. And each of them have got different caps. So Auslan Level 1 interpreting is for work-related activities for employees who are deaf or have a hearing impairment, including remote interpreting and real-time captioning. Okay, this is capped at $6,000 for every 12 months. This, like all things, you can find ways to value add with this. Okay. Auslan Level 2 interpreting is for job interviews and related activities such as site visits, completion of tests and information sessions for people who are deaf or have a hearing impairment. The funding level is uncapped for this. Okay, so for the entire time that you're interviewing prospective employees, or you are training them and getting them up to standard, you're onboarding them, throughout that entire time the Auslan interpretation is covered, which is amazing. Auslan Level 3, okay, interpreting, and I love this one. This one is my favourite out of all of them, and such a massive value add, is to help co-workers receive training, in this case the Certificate 2 in Auslan, to communicate with employees who are deaf or have a hearing impairment and who use Auslan as their main methods of communication. This is capped at $855. Now, in isolation, having employees learn Auslan may not seem like a massive value add, but when you think about it, there are actually very, very few places and businesses out there that have Auslan capable staff. So suddenly your service becomes very niche, and you suddenly start to attract a segment of the population that you never thought you'd be able to attract. So like I said, it's a real value add, that particular one. And the last one is the disability awareness training. Okay, this is capped at $1,500 for each employee with a disability or impairment within a 12-month period. Now, this is another value add. Okay, the disability awareness training is around the employee's disability or impairment and how, as co-workers, you can work with them to get the most out of your employee. So that on its own is great. But often at 30 Foot Drop, we offer this service. Okay, we will also make sure that we put in there, as well as that, some more generalised training, because if people don't understand the general idea around disability and awareness around it and becoming more comfortable with it, then there's no point in moving into the more advanced subjects. So it's a real value add. Really, really encourage people to have a look at that. So with that, that's all the information that we've got for tonight. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this. And as we said at the beginning, okay, we really encourage people to ask questions. So I'm going to give people about 5 minutes to put in any questions that they've got or queries or something similar. Now, to do this, you need to go to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay, there is a chat box there. That is the only one we can actually monitor at the moment because we don't have the resources to monitor multiple streaming points at once. So please, if you have any questions, and they don't even have to be related to what we're talking about tonight. Okay, these questions can be on anything. Okay, open, honest conversations. That is what we're about. Okay, so head there, put in any questions you've got. I'll chat to you in 5. Alrighty, and we're back. So, hope everybody has really enjoyed tonight. We do have one question that's come in, and it's a doozy. It's a really good one, actually. It's one that I probably should have covered a bit better. So, it's related to this supported wage system that we covered earlier, supported wage subsidy, that we covered earlier, around fair pay for fair work. And the question is, who actually assesses this system? Is it the Disability Employment Service Provider, or is it the employer who assesses it? The answer is neither. So they actually have independent assessors that will come out and do it. This allows and makes sure that there is fair. These people are very specialised in what they do, and they are very good at what they do. So that way it stays fair and impartial, which is vital. Okay, supported wage system is often used for some of the more vulnerable people in society. So great question. Thank you very much for asking it. That's all we've got time for tonight. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. Now, don't forget that we have got webinars happening on every Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, going ahead inside. Well, we're not doing them on school holidays because, let's face it, life is busy enough when the kids are on holidays if I'm watching webinars as well. Oh, God. So, we're doing them all the time. Jump onto our website, jump onto our Eventbrite, have a look at some of the subjects. We've got some amazing stuff, people. Okay, also follow us on social media, give us a rating, a review. We've got some really, really cool stuff coming up. I've got a new toy that I am hoping to debut on 30-foot drop very soon that will blow people's mind. I know it's blowing my mind. I'm loving it. So thank you very much, everybody. Look after yourselves, look after each other, and catch you next time.
See ya.